Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Chucky, Child's Play. Chucky is the main antagonist of the Child's Play horror film series. Chucky is portrayed as a notorious serial killer whose spirit inhabits a fictional good guy doll, and continuously tries to transfer his soul from the doll to a human body. The character has become one of the most recognizable horror icons, often mentioned alongside Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Ghostface, Leatherface, Pinhead, and Michael Myers, and has been referenced numerous times in pop culture. In 1999, the Chucky character was nominated for the MTV Movie Award for Best Villain for the film Bride of Chucky. He was created by writer-director Tom Holland and is portrayed and voiced by Brad Dourif in both live-action and voice-over. Design. Child's Play director Tom Holland explained that Chucky draws heavily from the My Buddy dolls. I originally called him Buddy and I couldn't use it because of the My Buddy doll. I went out, I got a My Buddy doll, I got a Raggedy Ann, a Raggedy Andy, and I got one of those life-size baby infants. And I still have it out back. They are the creepiest things in the world. And what I told designer Kevin Yaha was, I wanted Buddy, but I wanted the Raggedy Andy coloring those button overalls. And I wanted the freckles and all that. And then I wanted the meanest looking son of a expletive Raggedy Ann. An Andy doll that you could create, but I wanted it with the creepiness of that infant doll. Child's Play, 1988. In 1988, Charles Lee Ray, known as the Lakeshore Strangler, is a voodoo-obsessed serial killer on the run from the police in Chicago. After his driver and partner Eddie Caputo abandons him in his van to escape the police, Ray takes refuge in a toy shop where he is shot by homicide detective Mike Norris. Aware that he is mortally wounded, Ray swears revenge on Mike and Eddie before transferring his soul into a good guy doll via a voodoo ritual. Thunder and lightning destroy the store due to the ritual. Mike finds Ray's body in the aftermath, believing him to be dead. A day later, single mother Karen Barkley buys a good guy doll from a peddler for her son Andy's 6th birthday. The doll, now possessed by Ray and called Chucky, kills Andy's babysitter Maggie by hitting her with a hammer, causing her to fall out of the apartment window to her death. Mike suspects that Andy killed her, angering his mother. The police leave and Andy insists that Chucky is alive, much to the dismay of Karen, who scolds Andy for this claim. The next day, Chucky tells Andy to skip school and take him to Eddie's house. Andy does so, and urinates outside while Chucky enters the residence. Chucky turns up the gas in Eddie's oven, startling Eddie, who shoots and accidentally causes an explosion, killing him while Chucky escapes. Andy is suspected of the crime and placed in a mental hospital. Karen, at home, finds that Chucky has no batteries in him. Chucky, realizing he has been found out, suddenly says, "Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?" Karen, disturbed, threatens to throw Chucky into the fire. Just then, Chucky's voice changes to when he was in human form, cursing Karen. After a little fight, Chucky then bites her arm and escapes. He later sneaks into Mike's car, attempts to strangle him and causes the car to crash. Mike survives and shoots Chucky in the shoulder, but Chucky makes an escape. Chucky confronts his voodoo mentor, John, about why the bullet wounded him, and John insists that Chucky is slowly becoming human. Chucky's plea for help is rejected. Angered, he reveals a voodoo doll of John and breaks his leg, then threatening to kill him if he does not comply. John, frightened for his life, claims that Chucky must possess the body of the first person he revealed himself to, or else he will be forever trapped in the form of a good guy doll. Chucky realizes this is Andy, fatally wounding John by stabbing his voodoo doll, and escapes. Mike and Karen arrive on the scene, and John tells them with his dying breath that Chucky can only be killed with a puncture to the heart, as he is not fully human yet. Chucky goes to the mental hospital to possess Andy's body, who manages to evade Chucky. Dr. Ardmore, looking after Andy, stops him, but is electrocuted to death by Chucky. Andy returns home, where Chucky has already arrived via the chimney. He knocks out Andy and attempts to possess him, but Mike and Karen arrive suddenly and save Andy. Enraged, Chucky stabs Mike in the leg. Karen takes Andy and runs Chucky in pursuit. Karen manages to trap Chucky in the fireplace, and proceeds to burn him. The two open the fireplace, when a charred Chucky attacks them once again. Karen shoots him with Mike's gun multiple times, but misses his heart. Mike's partner Jack Santos arrives and is nearly strangled by Chucky, but Chucky is finally shot in the heart and seemingly killed. Karen, Mike, and Jack realize nobody will believe their story and leave the apartment after one final look at Chucky's remains. The movie fades with only Andy looking back at the burnt remains of the killer doll. Child's Play 2, 1990. 2 years after the events of Child's Play in 1990, the company that made the original Chucky doll, Good Guys, is hit with bad publicity surrounding the incident. The company, as a result, decided to recover Chucky's burnt body and rebuild to disprove the theory. However, one of two men who were creating his new body are killed via electrocution, which is implied to be caused by Chucky. Chucky is then taken away by the CEO's assistant Mattson. While Mattson leaves his car getting vodka at a store, Chucky, still after Andy, phones Grace, the manager of a foster center, and asks for Andy's new address by posing as his uncle. Chucky then carjacks the car and forces Mattson to drive him to the home of Phil and Joanne Simpson, Andy's new foster parents, since his mother Karen is now in a mental hospital. Despite obliging, Mattson is suffocated to death by Chucky with a plastic bag. In the house, Chucky, while looking for Andy, destroys the Tommy Goodguy doll with Joanne's statue and buries the toy in the backyard. He then poses as Tommy, and Andy, who got grounded along with his foster sister Kyle, plays with him thinking he is Tommy. That night, Chucky gags Andy and nearly possesses him, but once again is stopped, this time by Kyle, who sneaked into Andy's bedroom. Kyle, though, is blamed for what happened to Andy. Phil throws Chucky into the basement, where he discovers he is bleeding, and thus turning slowly human. Chucky stalks Andy to his new school. A cunning Chucky writes obscenities on Andy's worksheet, causing his new teacher, Miss Kettlewell, to keep him in detention. Andy hears Chucky and escapes from the classroom in which he was serving detention. Chucky stabs the teacher with a pump before beating her to death with a yardstick for revenge. That night, after Phil insists Chucky was in the basement the whole time, Andy, using an electric knife, goes after him. Chucky fights him, but Phil arrives and dies after Chucky makes him fall down the stairs, snapping his neck like a twig. Joanne, thinking Andy killed him, has him sent back to the foster center. Kyle, though, finds the Tommy doll, and after discovering Chucky is not in the dustbin, tries to warn Joanne, but she too is killed by Chucky in cold blood as well. Chucky orders her to drive him to the foster center. Thereafter, Kyle sets off the fire alarm. Chucky kills Grace by stabbing her, which causes her to land on a photocopy machine. Kyle goes after both Chucky and Andy, who are heading to the Play Pals factory. At the factory, Chucky again fails to possess Andy, and instead bleeds, meaning he is now trapped in the doll, having wasted too much time in the doll's body. As a result, Chucky decides to kill Andy instead, but fails. Chucky, though, loses one of his hands and replaces it with his knife. He then kills a factory worker by having a bit of machinery dropped on him. Chucky dies again, by having molten plastic poured on him and a hose goes into his mouth causing his head to explode like a balloon. Child's Play 3, 1991. 8 years after the events of Child's Play 2 in 1998, the factory is reopened. Chucky's remains are lifted away by a claw crane. As it passes a vat of plastic, the remains bleed into it, causing Chucky's soul to inhabit a new doll. Chucky kills the CEO of the toy company by strangling him to death, and traces Andy on the CEO's computer, finding him at a military school. Chucky delivers himself to the school hoping to transfer into Andy's body, but is instead found by young recruit Tyler, who, once finding that the package for Andy is a good guy doll, decides to keep the doll for himself. Chucky is aggravated by this twist of events at first, but inadvertently reveals his secret when realizing that Tyler is completely unknowing to who he really is and his true intentions, unlike Andy, and is thus easier to manipulate and possess. Each time Chucky tries to execute his plan, he fails because Tyler constantly wants to play, and Chucky reluctantly goes along with it and pretends to be Tyler's friend. Chucky's plans soon change to killing Andy. This way, Chucky will stop Andy's interference forever, and simultaneously get revenge for suffering caused by Andy's earlier resistance. Later, Andy's roommate Harold sees Chucky slash the military barber's throat as the barber tried to cut Chucky's hair. The roommate does not tell Andy what he has witnessed. Chucky sabotages a game of capture the flag, replacing one side's paintballs with live ammunition. The blue team captain is killed in the contest. Chucky throws a grenade into the fray and runs off to search for Tyler. Harold sacrifices himself by jumping on top of the grenade. Tyler eventually realizes Chucky's ultimate goal and true bad guy character. Fearful of Chucky, Taylor runs. The chase leads them into a fairground ride, where a side cuts half of Chucky's face off. Chucky catches Tyler planning to transfer his soul, but is shot several times by Andy as Andy cuts Chucky's hand off while he is grabbing at Tyler. Chucky is then thrown into a large fan where he is sliced to pieces. Bride of Chucky, 1998. 1 month after the events of Child's Play 3 in 1998, Chucky's remains are recovered by his former girlfriend and accomplice Tiffany, who has been searching for him for over 10 years. She stitches the pieces back together and performs the ritual to bring Chucky to life. At first, the Chucky doll remains comatose, and this leads to Tiffany believing that the ritual did not work. Meanwhile, Tiffany's neighbor Jesse and his girlfriend Jade have made an attempt to see each other again. Despite the attempts of Jade's overprotective uncle, Police Chief Warren, preventing any further reunion between the couple. They are driving through the rain in David's car, when they are soon pulled over by a local policeman who is hired by Warren to track down Jesse and Jade. If together, the policeman agrees to this task mostly because of an increase in his paycheck as a result. Back at Tiffany's home, she is visited by her friend Damien. He tries to deceive her into thinking he has committed a murder to please her by editing a bloody photo of his alleged victim that he has taken of himself. But Tiffany quickly catches on to the deception. At this point, Tiffany turns around to see that Chucky was no longer lying in the place that she left him, which was the pentagram she made for on the floor of the trailer for the ritual. Tiffany then proceeds to find ways for Damien to stumble upon Chucky in the trailer, and have Chucky kill him as a result. When Damien tries to seduce Tiffany, Chucky appears sitting beside her. After Damien makes fun of Chucky, Tiffany deceives Damien into thinking that they were actually going to have sex, and use Chucky as a toy. She handcuffs Damien to her bed, places Chucky on his chest and dances for Damien. While dancing, she confesses that she was once Chucky's lover while he was still in the human form of Charles Lee Ray. After Damien insults Chucky, the doll comes to life. He tears out Damien's lip piercings, causing excessive bleeding, and suffocates Damien with a pillow. Afterwards, Tiffany and Chucky share a happy reunion. However, it doesn't last. When she learns that what she thought was an engagement ring he left her was just a piece of stolen jewelry from one of his previous victims, she promptly refuses to help Chucky become human, and locks him in a baby crib, intending to just keep him there as a prop. For the next couple of days, she taunts Chucky coming home, and telling him that she thinks he was right when he said it would be best if they got married, to later bash Chucky's hopes of being freed by giving him a bride doll to marry instead. It is hinted that Tiffany originally plans to move on to another guy when she asks Jesse, who happens to be her neighbor, if he would be free to hang out sometime later on while getting rid of Damien's body, which she locks away in her chest. Later that night, while taking a bath and watching the news about Officer Bailey's and Damien's bodies being discovered, and later on the Bride of Frankenstein, Chucky escapes using the sharp engagement ring as the bars in the crib are wood, and in retaliation kills Tiffany by throwing a small television in her bathtub and electrocuting her, and then transferring her soul into the bride doll as a form of revenge. Tiffany is furious when she wakes up and discovers what Chucky has done, but reluctantly follows Chucky's lead when she realizes that in order to transfer her soul into a human body, they would both need an amulet that was buried with Chucky's body in Hackensack, New Jersey, since Chucky wore it the night he died as Charles Lee Ray, the Lakeshore Strangler. The two of them soon hatch a plan, and Tiffany calls Jesse to ask him to take two dolls to a friend at the Hackensack Cemetery in New Jersey, and promises $1,000 as a reward for complying. Pulled in by the money and the thought of what he could do with it for himself and Jay, Jesse decides to do the favor for Tiffany. Jesse stops by Tiffany's to pick up Chucky and Tiffany and finds them in their doll state. He then goes to Jade's to pick her up and run away with her. It is then that Chucky and Tiffany plan to possess the young couple once they have the amulet needed for the ritual. During the road trip to Hackensack, Chucky and Tiffany kill anyone who stands in Jesse's and Jade's way, including Jade's uncle, who comes to leave a bag of marijuana for Needle Nose to find and arrest Jesse for, and Needle Nose, who pulls Jesse and Jade over, finds the bag and intends to arrest Jesse, thus stopping the trip to Hackensack to Chucky's amulet. Jesse and Jade are soon on the run when they are informed by David that the police are pinning the murders of Bailey and Damien on them, while also comparing Jesse and Jade to Bonnie and Clyde and Mickey and Mallory from Natural Born Killers, both a couple who were coincidentally mass murderers themselves. Jesse and Jade are completely unaware that Chucky and Tiffany are not only alive, but the real culprits behind the murders and Warren's disappearance, and begin to gradually suspect each other, both too horrified and in love to leave the other and sell the other out to the cops. Jesse and Jade soon stop at a hotel and are married, while watching the news about the murders, and the cops search for them in the hotel room. The room is entered by another pair of intrusive newlywed, Russ and Diane. While talking, Diane steals Jade's ring as well as the money Tiffany gives them for taking them to the cemetery. Angered by what she witnessed, Tiffany calls Diane a thieving slut and decides to kill both Russ and Diane that night. Later on, she carries out her decision by throwing a wine bottle up into a mirror that hangs over the couple's bed while they have sex, and Russ and Diane are killed by the sharp shards of glass that fall onto them. The glass also destroys the waterbed, causing it to explode and for water and blood to engulf the bedroom floor. Chucky is impressed by this creative murder. He realizes his love for Tiffany and tells her that he loves her. He then proposes to her, and after putting on the ring, they engage in sexual intercourse themselves. The hotel's housekeeper finds Diane's and Ross' corpses, and her screams alert Jesse and Jade, and they come in to check and see what the matter is and find the bloodbath themselves. They flee from the hotel with Chucky and Tiffany horrified and suspicious of one another more than ever. They argue with each other, accusing each other of all of the evil doings that had occurred throughout the whole road trip. When they are approached by David, who had tracked them down after speaking to each one about the couple's suspicions of each other, Chucky and Tiffany finally reveal themselves to Jesse and Jade after David finds Warren's body during the continued trip to Hackensack and alerts the nearby police. David, terrified by the dolls, backs out of the van and unknowingly into a passing truck, which kills him brutally. And immediately after escaping the police, Chucky and Tiffany reveal their true identities to the teens, as well as their true intentions to possess them in order to become human again. The group steals a mobile home after killing the elderly owners, outwitting the police who had guarded it. During the ride in the mobile home to Hackensack, Jesse and Chucky ride in the front with Chucky armed with a gun, while Tiffany prepares Jade for the ritual and makes Swedish meatballs and bakes cookies for Chucky as well. After Tiffany serves him a plate of cookies, Chucky tells Jesse about the new pleasures of being married and having a wife, saying he would have never waited this long to tie a knot. Jesse spots the pile of dirty dishes left by Chucky and remembers that because of morals and old sayings her mother would consistently tell her as a little girl, Tiffany despises men who enjoy being served to but can't at least wash the dishes. Jesse comments on Tiffany not being much of a housekeeper, which leads things between Chucky and Tiffany in the direction that he hoped for when Chucky orders Tiffany to wash the dishes. Chucky's callous request of her to wash the dishes sparks Tiffany's fury and leads to an explosive argument between the two that involves the couple throwing sexual insults, plates, and a cookie at one another. Jade then takes advantage of the situation and Tiffany's distractions by kicking her into the oven. Chucky screams in rage and shoots at Jade but misses, after which Jesse shoves Chucky through the window. As Chucky is flying out the window though, he shoots at Jesse at the same time and causes Jesse to drive the mobile home off the highway and crashes it, nearly destroying the vehicle. Jade escapes the mobile home with the help of Jesse, who saves her from the vengeful Tiffany before this. However, Jade is later found by Chucky, who still has the gun he had on the mobile home. Jesse manages to get off the mobile home before it explodes due to broken wire shocks coming into contact with gasoline, and finds Tiffany. Seeing Chucky forcing Jade to go to the cemetery and find his grave, Jesse grabs Tiffany by her hair and runs off, pursuing Chucky and Jade while carrying the horribly injured and burnt Tiffany, finding his grave, and killing a man who is digging it up for investigation into the murders on account of finding Chucky's DNA on a lighter. At the scene of the crime, Chucky forces Jade to open the coffin, then has her take the amulet and toss it up to him. Jesse with Tiffany finds them, and both Jesse and Chucky trade both women to have their own wives back. Chucky ties up Jesse and Jade, and with a now reluctant Tiffany, proceeds to perform the ritual. Right before the ritual is completed, Tiffany stops it by slipping a knife out that Chucky left in his pocket while they kiss, and stabs him in the back. Chucky falls, and when he looks up at Tiffany and asks her why, she tells him to just look at them, and that they truly belong dead. Chucky appears to have lost consciousness at first, in which Tiffany tells him, "Goodbye, darling. I'll see you in hell." However, as Jesse and Jade free themselves and Tiffany watches them and is thus distracted, Chucky picks up a shovel and attacks her. Finding another shovel, Tiffany fights back and the two proceed to fight to the death, with Chucky coming out on top after he fatally stabs her. Jesse then knocks Chucky into his grave, and just at that moment a crime investigator shows up to arrest Jesse and Jade. He stops and discovers the truth, however, when he sees the distraught Chucky, who is trying to escape, yelling out, "Let me out! Let me out! Let me out!" Jade grabs the gun from the crime investigator, and before she kills him, Chucky tells her he'll come back, because he always does, but ends his fifth life with a quite comical line, "But dying is such a bitch." Jade then proceeds to shoot Chucky 5 times and kills him. The crime investigator lets Jesse and Jade go, and tells them that he would tell the police that they weren't the murderers after all. As Jesse and Jade leave the gruesome scene, the crime investigator stays behind waiting for the cops' arrival, wondering how to tell the police the truth and that Chucky and Tiffany were the culprits behind the murders the whole time. He stumbles upon Tiffany, who suddenly awakens in labor. The crime investigator watches horrified as she gives birth to her and Chucky's child, a tiny pale infant with angry eyes and sharpened, pointy teeth. The movie transitions into its ending credits, with a short shot of the newborn baby jumping up and presumably killing the crime investigator, thus hinting that a sequel of Chucky's legacy and the Child's Play series is soon to follow. Bride of Chucky, 2004. Six years after the events of Bride of Chucky, Chucky and Tiffany's unnamed child, who was born in the closing moments of the previous film, is shown living in the UK with an abusive ventriloquist who passes him off as a talking doll. The pale, nervous little doll has big blue eyes, long eyelashes and spiky red hair, along with low self-esteem due to people always laughing at him. He calls himself a freak and an orphan, and assumes people will laugh at him because of the way he looks. One day he sees Chucky and Tiffany on TV and realizes that help's not an orphan after all, he is their son. He manages to escape the mean ventriloquist, hops on the back of a truck and mails himself to California. His box ends up in a horror movie prop room where the Chucky and Tiffany dolls have been stored. He wakes them up with the amulet he carries, and the family reunion takes place. When Chucky, after calling him ugly and laughing at him, discovers that he is his child, he faints. Tiffany, however, is ecstatic and motherly toward him from the very beginning. Chucky and Tiffany immediately disagree over the gender of their child due to it having no genitals. Chucky believes it is a boy and names him Glenn, but Tiffany, however, insists it is a girl and names it Glenda. Glenn is horrified by his parents' hobby of killing and wants them to stop. Tiffany, in a moment of parental responsibility and guilt, agrees, adding that she wants them to stop killing completely. She tries her best, even apologizing to some of the victims' families, but she can't seem to stop. It's just a little slip. She consoles herself and remains gentle and loving with her Glenda, still insisting the child is a girl even though he has stayed in the same clothes Meanwhile, Chucky, who pretended to agree to the plan, instead takes Glenn along on murderous adventures to teach him the ropes and get to him to enjoy it. Throughout all of this, Tiffany and Chucky want to escape the doll bodies and become human again, inhabiting the bodies of Jennifer Tilly and her chauffeur. They capture and impregnate Jennifer Tilly with a turkey baster. A little later, another personality within the Glenn doll emerges, Glenda, who doesn't mind killing at all. After she murders someone, Glenn re-emerges sobbing and ashamed, and Tiffany comforts him. Jennifer Tilly gives birth to twins, a boy and a girl, and Tiffany decides it's perfect because there are bodies for Glenn and Glenda as well. With all the chaos of the events, Chucky, exasperated by these experiences, finally decides that he prefers life as a doll over life as a human. Tiffany is disturbed by this and decides to take Glenn, Glenda, and leave Chucky. Enraged and heartbroken, Chucky kills Tiffany, but Glenn, horrified of what his father just did, takes an axe and hacks Chucky to pieces, killing him. Before she dies, Tiffany succeeds in transferring her soul into Jennifer Tilly's body, and she picks up Glenn to comfort him. The movie then skips 5 years to Glenn and Glenda's birthday party given by Jennifer Tilly for her 2 human children, both redheads like the Glenda doll. Glenda is shown to be a mischievous, scary little girl, while Glenn is anxious and nervous. Glenn has a present to open. It turns out to contain Chucky's severed right arm, which rises up to grab him as Chucky's evil laugh ends the movie. Curse of Chucky, 2013. 4 years after Seed, Chucky arrives in the mail of the family home of paraplegic Nika and her mother Sarah. That night, Sarah is found dead from a stab wound in her stomach, and her death proclaimed a suicide. The next day, Nika's older sister Barb arrives accompanied by her husband Ian, daughter Alice, live-in nanny Jill, and father Frank, a priest. Alice finds Chucky and keeps him. Nika and Alice cook chili for dinner, and Chucky secretly pours rat poison into one of the bowls. Father Frank eats the poison, and after leaving the house is fatally involved in a car crash where he is then decapitated. After everyone else has gone to their rooms to sleep, Nika attempts to track down the origins of the Chucky doll. She looks up Chucky doll evidence on the internet, where she finds news articles of the unsolved Chucky murders and the doll's link to dead serial killer Charles Lee Ray. Chucky sneaks out of Alice's bed and kills Jill by kicking a bucket of rainwater over onto the floor's power outlets. Jill is electrocuted to death, which also causes a blackout. Barb gets up to check on Alice and finds Chucky sitting on the stairs that lead to the attic. Thinking that Alice is in the attic, Barb goes up to look for her, but she is killed by Chucky with a kitchen knife. With the elevator unusable due to the blackout, Nika crawls up the stairs to the first floor. Barb is already dead by the time she gets there, and Chucky reveals himself to Nika. Nika wakes up Ian, who takes Nika to the garage before going back into the house to find Alice. Chucky enters the garage and starts the car, trying to kill Nika with carbon monoxide poisoning. Ian returns to the garage and, believing that Nika is responsible for the murders, disarms her. There is a hidden camera on Chucky which Ian had planted to get evidence of Barb's affair with Jill. Ian reviews the footage, which shows that Alice is locked in a closet and Chucky is alive. Before Ian can act, Chucky uses Nika's wheelchair to run Ian over and kills him with a hatchet. Nika manages to break out of her restraints and decapitates Chucky with a hatchet, though he is still alive, and reattaches his head. Chucky pushes Nika over the balcony and she falls to the ground floor. Nika asks why Chucky is doing this, and through flashbacks, Chucky explains that he was a friend of the family and in love with Sarah. Chucky killed Nika's father and kidnapped Sarah while she was heavily pregnant. When Chucky realized Sarah betrayed him by calling the police, he stabbed her in the stomach, which caused Nicker to be born paraplegic and fled. Chucky's flight from the police lead to his death as a human, setting off the events of the franchise, which is why he came back to Sarah for revenge. A police officer arrives at the house, but when he enters he only sees Bab's body upstairs and Nicker holding the bloody knife. Chucky watches, unmoving from a nearby chair. Some time later, Nicker is found guilty of the murders and sent to an asylum. The arresting officer takes Chucky away in a plastic bag to be delivered to an unknown person. While in his car, Tiffany, aka Chucky's wife, pops up in the back seat and slits his throat. Tiffany then mails Chucky to his next target. Alice, now living with her grandmother, comes home from school to find Chucky waiting for her. Chucky persuades Alice to play hide the soul, starting a chant that is supposed to transfer his soul to Alice's body. Chucky had informed Alice that her grandmother was in the cellar. While saying the chant, the grandmother pops up outside the cellar door with a plastic bag over her face, revealing Chucky had suffocated her. In the post-credits scene, Chucky's mailed again to another victim, who turns out to be Andy Barkley. After cutting himself out, he looks at an old picture of Andy when he was 6. When Chucky turns around to face Andy, he sees him, but now a full-grown man prepared with a shotgun, leaving Chucky almost speechless. The scene then cuts to black as the shotgun is fired. Cult of Chucky, 2017. An adult Andy Barkley returns home after a bad date and is revealed to have Chucky's head, which is still conscious and deformed after being repeatedly tortured by Andy in retribution for his crimes. Meanwhile, Nicker Pierce has spent the past 4 years in a mental institution after being framed by Chucky for the murder of her family. After years of intense therapy, she now believes she was responsible for the murders and that Chucky was just a manifestation of her psychosis. As a result of her breakthrough, her doctor drive, Foley has her transferred to a medium-security mental institution. After arriving, Nicker becomes part of a regular group therapy session, which is composed of Michael, who is actually named Malcolm and is revealed to have multiple identity disorder, Angela, an old woman who believes herself to be dead, Claire, a woman who burned her house down, and Madeline, a disturbed patient who smothered her infant son to death. Dr. Foley introduces a new therapy technique which involves a good guy doll to the group. Most of the patients are deeply unsettled by the doll except for Madeline, who takes the doll and treats it as her baby. Nicker is visited by Tiffany Valentine, who reveals that Nicker's niece, Alice, has died and leaves her a good guy doll which she claims was a gift from Alice. That night, Chucky awakens and finds Nicker, only to discover that she had attempted suicide by slashing her wrists with one of the spokes of her wheelchair. The next morning, Nicker awakens to find that her wrists have been stitched up and that a message stating "not so fast" has been left in a puddle of her blood. She then discovers that Angela has died, apparently of suicide, after having her wrists cut, and the message "Chucky did it" left in her blood. Angela's death leaves the group shaken, and after realizing that Valentine was the last name of Charles Lee Ray's girlfriend, Nicker begins to believe that Chucky has returned and was not a fantasy like she had been led to believe. Believing Madeline is in danger, Nicker has Michael pursue her out to the institution's graveyard in order to warn her. However, Madeline throws both the doll and Michael into an empty grave. The orderlies rescue Michael, but it is heavily implied that Chucky has transferred his soul into his body. After Claire tries to get rid of the other doll, it bites her, leaving Dr. Foley and the orderlies to believe that she is self-harming. Claire becomes hysterical and Dr. Foley and Carlos sedating her and strapping her to a gurney. After Claire is left alone, one of the Chucky dolls kill her by smashing the skylight in the room and decapitating her with shards of broken glass. In a private session with Dr. Foley, Nicka agrees to be hypnotized in order to regain any repressed memories about her involvement in the murders. While hypnotized, it is revealed that Foley has been sexually abusing Nicka during their previous sessions. Foley is then hit from behind by Chucky with a glass bottle, and offers Nicka one of the shards to kill Foley, although she doesn't go through with it. Foley believes Nicka is the one who assaulted him, but is willing to keep quiet in order to blackmail her for sexual favors. Meanwhile, Madeline takes her good guy doll and smothers it with a pillow, forcing her to confront the repercussions of her real child's death. The orderlies bury the doll as a form of catharsis for Madeline. Andy learns about the murders online and realizes that Chucky has somehow managed to transfer his soul into multiple bodies at once. He hatches a plan to end the carnage by sending a good guy doll to the facility with a gun inside, cutting its hair so he can tell the difference. Andy arrives at the institution and commits himself by assaulting one of the security guards. Madeline is visited by her doll, who has risen from the grave, and allows him to kill her so she can finally be with her baby again. Foley returns to his office and finds Nicka tied in a straitjacket. He attempts to assault her again, but is knocked out by one of the Chucky dolls. The other Chucky doll enters, discovers Andy's package, and awakens the good guy doll. The three Chuckies reveal that the original Chucky found a voodoo spell on the internet which allowed him to separate his soul into multiple host bodies. He then reveals that Alice was one of his hosts, but was killed after one of Chucky's victims fought back against her. Carlos suddenly appears in the Dr. Foley's office and watches Nicka surrounded by three Chuckies. All the dolls kill Carlos as Nicka looks on in horror, while the short-haired Chucky leaves to kill Andy. One of the other Chuckies transfers his soul into Nicka and stomps Foley's skull in with the red high heels Foley had earlier placed on her. Chucky, Nicka wanders the hospital, and stumbles upon Michael, who shows her the body Ashley, claiming that he killed her. Chucky, Nicka refuses his claim as he had never actually transferred his soul into his body. Michael breaks down and states that he takes on so many personalities as a way of trying to be someone who matters before being killed by Madeline's Chucky. The short-haired Chucky attacks Andy in his cell, but after a brief struggle, Andy reaches into Chucky's chest and pulls out the gun and shoots the doll repeatedly before stomping its head. Andy attempts to shoot Chucky, Nicka, but had wasted all of his ammo. The institution is sent into lockdown, resulting in Andy being locked inside his cell, Madeline's Chucky going into hiding, and Chucky, Nicka escaping. Chucky, Nicka reunites with Tiffany before driving off together with a Tiffany doll which is revealed to hold a part of Tiffany's soul. In a post-credits scene, Andy's former foster sister Kyle from the second film enters Andy's house, having been sent by Andy to continue torturing Chucky's severed head. Appearance. In his original human form, Chucky is a Caucasian male with shoulder-length black hair and blue eyes. However, this changes once he enters the doll. He has long red hair and freckles, along with blue eyes. He wears blue overalls with a logo "Good Guys," a striped, multicolored striped shirt, and red sneakers throughout the first three films, and for most of the sixth film he looks like an everyday child's doll, but with the fourth film came his famous scars and stitches as well as a bloody eye. This appearance came about after he was chopped to bits at the end of the third movie. In the sixth film, he wears a rubber mask over his face to conceal his afflictions and pass himself off as a normal toy. However, the mask began peeling, and was subsequently taken off by the character Barb, revealing his actual look from the past two films, albeit with fewer scars and stitches. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Would you like to know more?